So what we're going to be talking about today is what I'll do is I'll do a bit of a slideshow. I'll put together a bit of a presentation to talk to you about about spells. As it's a very big topic. I've tried to include as much in there as possible. So I've given you some, you can go away with quite a bit of information about what they are and what you can do about it. Um, but what we're going to be doing as well is at the end we're going to have some time for some Q&A. So I'll sort of present this body of work to you, and then at the end we can really we can have a nice chat and answer any questions you've got about it. So so here we are talking about really spells, and spells are a form of magic. Um, there's both personal and collective spiritual influences that might be affecting you. So it's a lot bigger topic than you think, and you'll probably get an idea of that as we go along. Some of you might be already aware of this, of course, but it should be pretty bit of an eye-opening presentation. So there's a little picture of me. Done a lot of sessions over the years in metaphysics, and lots of retreats, hundreds of retreats, created lots of modalities with Deb and I. We run a spiritual school, as I'm sure most of you know. We're teaching lots of different forms of healing. And we're really passionate about getting this information out there, because metaphysics, as you'll see when we go through, this is just one area. One area. Spells is just one area of such a big topic of metaphysics. And everything comes down to the invisible world of reality. So many of us are trying to make changes in the world of effect, and we need to go back to cause, which is the invisible reality. Every single thing, this coffee mug I'm holding here in my hand, someone had a thought. Oh, it'd be good to, instead of going to the river all the time, it'd be good to have something I can capture. I can walk around and sip water later on during the day. And so they created a cup. And so everything in our lives is created by the invisible: thoughts, feelings, dreams, visions, omens, that sort of thing. And lots of cultures in the past, lots of spiritual practices really put a lot on the invisible world. And so we're really passionate about sharing that and getting some information out there to people, training people if they want to learn about it and become practitioners, of course, but even just for their own personal healing, because you heal yourself, you heal the world. Rising tide lifts all ships. So if we can help ourselves, we definitely go a long way in helping the collective. And so there's some key concepts I want to go through with you in relation to what spells are and what they're not. So here we are from the very beginning. The concept of a spell. It's been around for a long time. It's a spiritual or energetic influence using words, both spoken and written, has been around for centuries. Because even if we just look at the word spelling, it's got the word spells in there. Words are more than just speech or writing. When spoken, words become frequencies and vibrations of direct energy. There is both dark magic and good magic. Magic basically involves guiding energy using natural forces like sound and thought to achieve a specific result. So if you know what you're doing with this, you can negatively influence people and things and environments and situations, or you can positively influence them, which is basically what we're doing when we're doing healing work. And so it's a really interesting thing to look at what a spell is when you break it down into its components. It's a belief, an idea, a narrative, or an energetic imprint that's accepted by the subconscious without critical awareness. So it just goes through. Because if you had critical awareness of it, you'd say, "Oh, I don't want that," or "Yeah, I do want that. That's a good one." But oftentimes we're not even aware of it, and so we're being programmed and spell cast without even knowing a lot of the time. So it's a foreign intention implanted into someone's field. So it's a really key thing to imagine. A psychological, energetic influence that shapes behavior, self-perception, and life outcomes. So this is really big stuff. And I'm going to touch on some things today that, how can I explain this? I might touch on a few things today that just, we're going to look at the macro and we're going to look at the micro. So we're going to look at the collective and we're going to look at the individual effects of all of this. So a spell is anything that hijacks your perception and directs your life from the shadows. So how do they originate? Well, if we think about the word abracadabra, we always think of magic. An ancient Aramaic phrase, abracadabra, actually means "with my words I influence" or "with my words I create," depending on what translation you're reading. And so this is the magic. The magic is the power of the spoken word. We've got something, we've got this tongue, we can speak and we can make people feel absolutely 10 feet tall and amazing and bulletproof, or we can use our words to make people feel small as an ant. So many spiritual influences and texts. For example, the Bible, it says in the beginning there was the Word, and God said, He said, let there be light. And so there's the sound that came first. Of course, in other traditions, there's Om. And in Indigenous Australia, when Deb and I were studying with an Aboriginal Nungra, which is basically an energy healer, um, I was so shocked when they were talking to someone. The first thing they'd do when someone was ill, they'd they'd walk up to them, and the first thing they do before they spoke about techniques or this or that or energy, they'd say who might be thinking ill of you. And I was so blown away by that. And so they give it, every single culture that I've ever looked at, has got a version of this. They just call it different things. The evil eye, people have talked about these things from all different backgrounds. So all worlds and words, all worlds were created through somatic sound, with each frequency corresponding to a specific geometric shape. So this is getting back to fundamental creation. So we really don't understand the power that we wield through our thoughts and our words to direct outcomes. So we have different kinds of spells. We've got collective spells, and one of those collective spells is societal spells. So, success means overworking. Your worth is based on productivity. You must follow the path everyone else follows. If you fail once, you're a failure. These things are put out there. These are societal spells that we can buy into, and if we don't acknowledge them and get rid of them, they sort of sit there in our subconscious. So then you've got mainstream media type of spells. So fear-based messaging. The world is unsafe. I find it really interesting that when you watch the news, so much of it is negative, and then they have a few little positive stories at the end. If you look at one of the other things they do is manufactured division, us versus them, liberal and Labor, right wing, left wing. They're two wings of the same bird. And so people are so caught up in these spells that they're not looking above and seeing, well, what's behind this? Who or what is behind this, creating these two? Why is there only two parties? And this is such a manufactured situation we're in. There's always a situation, for example, in the mainstream media, there's always a baddie. It's Russia or it's China or it's terrorism or it's this or it's that. There's always some sort of manufactured narrative. And so this is a spell that we can either buy into and all the negativity and the fear and everything that comes with that, or we can simply choose not to. And we will talk about that at the end. And then, of course, another big one in the mainstream media, there's examples, there's many more, is hyperconsumerism. Buy this to be whole, beautiful, valuable. They have have sports stars, drinking like Mountain Dew. I tell you right now, they're not drinking Mountain Dew. they're doing cold plunge pools and they're doing all sorts of things to be healthy and well. So this is an idea of some of the mainstream media spells. And then there's also a group of people that understand what we're talking about here. There's a group of people, they sometimes get called the global elite. There's many different names for them, but these people, this sort of ruling class has been sort of passed down through thousands of years. And we're talking about going back to ancient times where, it was pretty normal to understand that we had, whenever there was a king, there was always a priest or a Merlin or someone there that understood the metaphysical realm that had a great influence over what the king did in the physical world. And so this has been going for a long time. Back in the day when we had wizards and we had sorcerers and, all this sort of stuff, it's just same sort of thing. It's just called different things. And in the West, we've been convinced that none of this stuff exists anymore, especially. And so what this does, it has a large scale influence. We're talking about the macro now. It has a large scale influence about how people perceive reality. What's normal or acceptable? Global fear cycles, panic, crisis, scarcity. These spells tend to target the collective emotional body, creating fear, hopelessness, submission, distraction. So what collective spells do is they shape timelines, pushing humanity towards certain states of consciousness. So remember, that's what some people are intentionally trying to do. If we go back to look at what a spell is, a belief, an idea, a narrative, an energetic imprint accepted by the subconscious, a foreign intention implanted by someone's field, a psychological, energetic influence that shapes behavior, self-perception, and life outcomes. Anything that hijacks your perception and directs your life from the shadows. Okay. So now the other thing is you are part of this force that moves in and through all things. The same energy that exists in you creates stars, solar systems, universes, trees, bees. What you are is so powerful. We've got this mind that we haven't been taught how to use properly, how to direct that energy, this force that moves in and through all things. And so without the proper training, we become susceptible to others that understand what we're talking about here, and they can influence what your mind thinks and how you feel, and therefore they can have a say over how this very powerful force that creates everything that's inside you, what it creates in our reality. And so we can actually learn how to take control back of that mechanism and how to use our mind to direct it and to direct this force that's inside of us, our spiritual essence, to create healing outcomes for ourselves and others and make a change. And it is what anciently they used to call the great work. It is the area that we want to be learning about and understanding because it's so powerful and so important. Do you want to make change in your life, in our world? That's the only way to do it because it's how reality works. So this is why I wanted to do this talk today because it's so important, especially as we start making our way into a very artificial environment in the world of AI. It's going to be more important than ever before to have these understandings so you can navigate yourself through that, but also keep the balance by keeping yourself in the real world. So what are some interpersonal spells? Well, when someone projects intention towards another, you'll never succeed. You're just like your father or your mother. Nobody will ever want you. You're too sensitive. You always mess things up. But then, of course, there's positive ones. You know, your mother telling you you're great, you're fantastic, you can do anything you put your heart and mind to. You know, there's also positive ones as well. Energetic spells, jealousy or envy, energetic attacks, obsessions, attachments, covert emotional control, manipulation or coercion, narcissistic projection fields. These are very prevalent in our society, within our family dynamics, within friendship groups. So we've got self-cast spells, internalized beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'll always struggle. My family is cursed. I don't deserve better. Most powerful spells are self-reinforcing loops born from repeated emotional experiences. And I'm going to repeat that because this is so important. Most powerful spells are self-reinforcing loops born from repeated emotional experiences. So when we look at healing at work, oftentimes either someone else is doing your head in or you are. Our relationships to ourselves and our relationships to other humans, because of words, spells, feelings, and our interactions with other people and ourselves create the most, a lot of the times the most issues for a human being. And so if we can learn how to recalibrate these beliefs and alchemize them into positive, it's so powerful. So how do these spells influence you? Well, our bodies consist of 70% water, our minds over 90% water. And so it emphasizes the profound implication of the thoughts and the feelings that we have internally, but also what we surround ourselves with. Because water is the elixir of life. It's an absolute conductor and amplifier. Anciently, they used to teach that water, or that quartz crystal was fossilized water. Liquid quartz crystal is what water is what they used to teach anciently. And it was so revered. If you look at the Japanese scientist, Dr. Masao Emoto, he uses experiments showing human attentions, emotions, and speech and how it affects water. So the words we speak are vibrational frequencies with sound waves that form a light wave energy. So sound emitting frequencies of a light that appears solid depending on how slow or fast it's oscillating and vibrating. Remember what we said before? In the beginning, there was the word, and God said, let there be light. Om. So sound is so huge here, and it permeates fields. So each word carries its own unique vibrational significance, which can either be a positive or a negative vibration. Spoken words vibrate at different frequencies, influencing the energy all around us and within us. What we do, what we think and say will all come back for us to experience our own creation, also known as karma. So each cell in your body responds to the frequencies produced by thoughts, words, and emotions. So it sounds simple. So you hear that and you go, okay, but then we still go out and we think negative thoughts, we feel feelings, and we speak of our problems and issues and about others. And then we wonder why we're still experiencing the same things with our health, the same manifestations in our lives, the same issues. So this is where, the law of action comes in. We need to take this information and put it into action for us to experience change. And this is the blueprint of how we do it. So this gives you an example. What I love about this is another lady called Dr. Or actually, I'm not sure she's a doctor. Her name is Veda Austin. And so she's taken what Masaru Emoto has been doing because he's passed away now. And she's like going next level with it around, leaving certain things next to water and then taking photos of it. It's incredible. So just have a look at this. So look at the words, pictures in water, the word compassion. Look at underneath what heavy metal music looks like. Look at the word thank you and look at the words I will kill you. Look at the word wisdom and then you fool. And then we can see the last one there is water before and after a Buddhist prayer. So they did this over a whole lake actually. And they did this incredible, this lovely Buddhist prayer. And look at when they afterwards, look at the beautiful formations afterwards. Those formations are the things that create health and vitality. And then the ones on the bottom, I mean, look at what that might be creating. And remember what we said before, we're 70% water and we're 90% water in our brain. This might explain why sometimes we wake up with headaches. This is just the words we say, the thoughts we think, let alone what we drink and what we eat, this sort of thing. So what are you watching on TV? What music you listen to? What are you reading? How are you speaking to yourself? How are you speaking to others? That's not me doing that, by the way. That's the computer just flicking back for some reason. Mercury retrograde, it's hilarious. And so this is a really big one. You know, and this is a generalization because what I like to do is I like to watch movies that make me laugh and that inspire me, or shows that make me laugh. Laughing is such a beautiful form of medicine. So if you're watching a rom-com, it makes you feel good. If you're watching a Seinfeld episode or a comedy that makes you laugh, it's powerful medicine. So this isn't about everything, right? But a lot of people are watching shows, that are always about murder or, emergencies in hospital or, there's so many things that are like just flooded with, images and pictures and disaster and stress and the music. And this all has a effect on us. Remember, just look at that. I think, what am I watching? What am I reading? What am I listening to? It sounds simple, but this has a profound effect, especially, just want you to have a look at that. Now, for a day or two, a week, a month, a year, but what about 50 years? What do you want? Do you want the top pictures in every drop of blood, every bit of water in you, or do you want the bottom? That's why it's so important to get a wrangle on your life and what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing, what you're exposing yourself to. So television, I'm always fascinated with words. I've been fascinated with words since I was a kid, and it's so good now with thesaurus and looking at the ancient meanings of words. Like for example, soldier. You break that down into soldier. Every single word has incredible, incredible ancient meaning. And so, anciently, it used to be, there's these sayings, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Anciently, your words were chosen very with reverence. People Excuse me for swearing, but people talk a lot of shit these days. They get on keyboards and they write and they say all this stuff. Anciently, people were very poised and because they understood the power of their words, and so they'd choose them carefully. So television is telling lies to your vision. It's just so, why is it called a television? It could be called anything. It has a big impact on people's minds. The television has what do they call them? TV programs. Another interesting word, isn't it? Programming the mind. The television, what do they call it? They call it a broadcast. It's a broad, meaning a wide reach and influence, and cast. The word they use is casting spells. Words and images has profound impact on people worldwide. So we know this now scientifically, thanks to back in when 9/11 happened and those planes crashed into the towers. We had for the very first time, we had satellites up in the sky that measured energetic responses, looking for perhaps information from outer space, picking up all sorts of anomalies and things like that. And so they had these satellites with these measuring devices, and they had this massive spike, almost like if you see someone hooked up to an ECG machine and they get stressed and it starts going up and down, up and down, up and down, a little bit like that. And so they said, whoa, what happened there? And they're looking around and they realized after a while, they put two and two together and they realized, wow, this was from when that got broadcast all around the world, you had millions of people watching live in real time that disaster unfolding, which up until that point was it's pretty unique and on a really grand scale. And so what you did is you had millions of people around the world over a prolonged period of time, because it was on every channel for days at a time, thinking thoughts, feeling feelings, resonating. And that went out on a grand scale, and this device was picking up on it. So what you think and what you feel absolutely makes a difference to your life and the collective lives of all of us. So how do spells affect people? Well, feeling not yourself, constant anxiety or fear without reason, repeating toxic patterns, feeling stuck or blocked, self-sabotage episodes, sudden loss of energy or identity, emotional reactions that feel not mine, difficulty breaking, free from people or systems. That's how we know we're being affected by some sort of spell. Now, it's easy to kind of, you hear the word spell and you think of, witchy poo kind of, energy. But really, we're talking about energy. We're talking about an energy that has been created to an effect and outcome. Advertising is spells. It's an intentional thought and to create a desired outcome, right? So it's not all bad. What we're just talking about is how can we not be affected negatively for ourselves and our lives? So there's often energetic indicators. Often you'll feel a tightness in the solar plexus. That's always my personal indicator. Now, you might find yours. It's really interesting to watch your own energy. Oftentimes you'll feel foggy in the mind. You feel disconnected from your intuition and some sort of emotional overwhelm. So these are some energetic indicators you can pick up. And over time, when you watch yourself around things where there's, a definite intention to have an outcome for you of what you're thinking and feeling, observe your energy, work out what your triggers and your indicators are. It actually becomes like a truth detector, to be honest. It's really, really handy. So there's psycho-spiritual indicators, hijacked narratives, limiting identity structures, chronic guilt or shame, and learned hopelessness. So if we think about what happened when, for example, the big C word went out around a few years ago around the world, and some of the things that were happening during that time, there was definitely some major things going on there. There was definitely some hijacked narratives, limiting identity structures, wanting people to be into a certain box and do certain things. There was guilt and shame going on, and there was certainly a learned helplessness. And, you can put the same sort of indicators, whether it's, financial crises, the stock market going up and down, the tariffs. There's all these different things that are going on that are, is there a desired outcome? Do people that are doing all this, do they know what they're doing? Are they trying to lead you and humanity to a certain place for their benefit or gain? Maybe, maybe not. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But becoming aware of this on the macro and the micro is an important step into you being a free and sovereign being, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I want to give you some context with all this because just to sort of bring it down into how this looks. So these are some real world things that have taken place and what I've seen in my clinic over the years. So we've got case study number 1, the career spell. A woman believes she must stay in her corporate job. That's what responsible adults do. This spell came from family, individual, but also society. So she's being pressured by family members and then as a collective society. Leads to burnout, low fulfillment, and disconnection from purpose. Breaking the spell allowed her to pursue her healing arts and to thrive. And I'm guessing that probably a lot of you can work out who that is. Debbie, in a corporate healing career, and then, got burnt out, went through health issues and got into healing work, broke the spell, got into the healing arts. Now she's doing great. So the beauty spell, this is me. No, I'm kidding. But so there's a young teenage girl who I know well, and constantly compares herself to online influencers. This is more of a recent thing. Media casts a spell of perfection equals worthiness. Creates a self-hate loop, eating disorder, and anxiety. We're all different. We're all perfect just the way we are. But if kids these days, if they allow themselves to constantly, they've got these, dolled up people and putting things in their lips and doing all sorts of stuff that, what's taking place there is a really mass, perfection equals worthiness that's been put on a lot of people these days, especially our youth. When you're a bit older, you see through all that stuff and you're like, but a lot of young people are really being affected by this. The anxiety is through the roof. It is a massive thing in our youth today. So breaking this spell came from withdrawing from media. That was difficult. Her mum worked with her for a long time. Very, very, lot of problems in the beginning doing that, but it changed her life and body acceptance rituals. Different young girl now. Just so different. So case study 3, the relationship spell. Someone told you repeatedly by a parent, you'll never find someone who will love you. Putting them down all the time. This individual spell becomes a subconscious identity blueprint. So then what happens, law of attraction? This person then attracted partners who reflected that spell. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Breaking the spell required rewriting the internal storyline, doing a session with her, and now she's out there and she's experiencing a beautiful relationship right now. But the first few, because of what happened when she was a child, wasn't good. So case study 4, the global fear spell. During a global crisis, the population is bombarded with fear messaging, whether it's financial issues, stock market issues, whether it's terrorism, whether it's pandemics, and people feel the fear messaging is unbelievable. Helpless, disconnected, paralyzed, distrustful. This spell weakens collective vitality. When you're feeling those things, do you think your nervous system is in fight or flight, or is in rest and digest and heal? So this spell weakens collective vitality. Breaking the spell involves sovereignty, discernment, and inner grounding. Taking your power back. So what we can do here is we can look at, and this is really important. If you're someone who's a therapist or a healer of some kind, but even for your own self, understanding how it works, I find myself I'd love to work out how, okay, well, that what you're saying makes sense, but how does that actually work? Getting into the nitty-gritty of it, because then it helps you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So how a spell works, the mechanics of a spell is attention hijacking, because remember, what we think and what we feel creates our reality on the outside. So if we can hijack that attention and direct it to think and feel a certain way, you can create realities. And if you can control what 8 billion people on the planet are thinking and feeling, what does that mean? You can significantly adjust outcomes. So attention hijacking, a spell directs attention to a narrow emotional pattern: fear, shame, unworthiness. Emotional resonance, because, and there's a reason why that happens, because if someone's feeling empowered, fulfilled, and abundant, it's very hard to hijack them in any way. They're bulletproof, you know. An emotional resonance that repeats plus emotional intensity causes what we call an imprint. The subconscious acceptance. When something is heard or experienced repeatedly, the subconscious accepts it as truth. Energetic cord or imprint. Spells create energetic pathways that loop behavior. Identity formation. Spells eventually become, this is who I am. This is the end game. This is the most powerful spell of all. Once you accept that, this is the difference between sort of psychic projection. Once it's accepted by yourself, it becomes a spell. You've been spellcast because you've accepted it. And then that's the most powerful spell of all. It becomes external and internal together. And it becomes an identity. So what can we do? Well, we need to stand in the law of dominion. This is your dominion. This is your being, your body, your mind, your spirit, your soul, your higher self, your subconscious mind, your conscious mind. This is your dominion. And you have the rights to that dominion, to be in control over the thoughts you think, your feelings and the words you speak, the actions you take about yourself and others. So it is the work you need to be concentrating on every day. It's not super easy, especially in the beginning, but after a while, you break the back of it. I'll never forget, I read a book by Tony Robbins when I was about 19 years old. It was called Notes from a Friend. And in that book, he had this exercise where you had to, every time you had a negative thought about yourself, you had to start again. So you had to go 10 days without having a negative thought about yourself. And I gave it a crack. And it was unbelievable to watch what your thoughts were. And after about halfway through the day, I was ringing one of my friends. I said, man, have you ever watched your thoughts before? I said, I'm just being totally, and I think I'm a psycho. And he's like, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, I think that. I think you're a psycho. No, I didn't think it. But, like people, when you actually stop and observe your thoughts, when you're first doing it, mind you, I was 19, right? So it was a long time ago. The thoughts you have, the negative thoughts that are just floating around there, it's incredible once you observe, but you've got to know where you're at. So I tried really hard. I couldn't get over 3 days, and I sort of stopped doing it. I was only 19. I got distracted with life and other things. But it is super powerful. Watch your thoughts. See if you can go an hour. See if you can go 2 hours and build it up over time. And add it in, expand it out to not just your thoughts, but what you say about yourself, about others. See if you can go an hour without thinking or saying anything negative about yourself or someone else or anything else for that matter. It's really, really interesting. It'll give you a really good insight to where you're at. So the flip side of this, if we consistently use and hear words, positive words, our minds and our bodies will reap the benefits. And we can also use revocations and declarations to clear up things from the past. Law of dominion is really about taking control right now in the present moment. And then the revocations and declarations is how we go back and clean up. Nothing has to be the way it was. We can revoke agreements and accepting of situations and certain spells, and we can declare our freedom, our sovereignty, and for things to be a different way. So how do we break spells? Well, the first step is to be awareness and naming of it. Because a spell loses power when we ask these questions. Who told me this? Whose belief is this? Is this even mine? Where's this come from? Or is it dad's or mum's? Or is it the media? Or is it my teacher at school that, you know, influenced me in this way? Whatever it is. And does this align with my inner truth? Disconnecting from the source, reduce media exposure, step out of toxic relationships, remove yourself from collective fear cycles. Really, really powerful one. That particular young girl I was talking about, she had to move schools because the group of people she was in friendship with was super toxic. There was one particular girl that was sort of, had her claws into this whole group of girls, and it was just so toxic, the things they were doing and talking about and things like that. So she moved schools, reduced her media exposure, stepped out of the toxic group she was in, became a different person, and also, you know, getting a phone off her for extended periods of time. So reclaiming the sovereign field. How do we do that? We ground, we get out in nature, breath work, centering in the heart, reconnecting to intuition, daily sovereignty invocation. I choose my own thoughts, I choose my own field. Revoke, declare, connect to what's real. You see, there's so much stuff that's going on to try and influence your mind and your spirit. So the way I look at this, at first, when I first learnt that, I felt a bit overwhelmed, if I was completely honest. I was young. But then I thought to myself, holy, if they're trying to do that, they're trying to influence and take control of our minds, they must know how friggin' powerful we are. So why would they bother otherwise? So we must be able to create some incredible stuff. So we need to know how to own our thoughts, our mind, our feelings, our words, our actions, our deeds. So, and nature, if you think about it, right, we're an energetic being. And where do we get our energy from? The sun, the earth, and our spiritual essence inside. So we need to get out in the sun. We need to connect to the earth. We need to breathe. We need to get out in nature. These are the things that have helped a human being be healthy and sound, body, mind, spirit, and soul for millions and millions of years. And so it'll help us have the strength to be able to come back to ourselves and choose our own thoughts and reclaim our own field. So the other thing we can break spells is we can do energetic clearing, cord cutting, timeline clearing, inner child healing, past life regression, ancestral healing, spiritual alchemy, energy medicine. Now, we obviously Rezinate, we offer all of those things, and we can also teach you how to do them on yourself and on others if you want to become a practitioner in any of these things. But there's lots of avenues to get these things done. Sometimes you need help from a practitioner. You can do a lot of those things I just went through yourself, but sometimes you do need assistance with these things. Some of these spells and energy cords can be quite strong. How else do we break spells? We rewrite the narrative, replace the old spell with a new intention. I am free to choose my own path. These are all things you can do yourself. I'm free to choose my own path. I trust my inner guidance. I don't have to listen to these people, the newspaper, the shows, the media. I trust my own inner guidance. My inner guidance is actually telling me to go and do this, to invest in that, to do this, to take this supplement, not that, not the thing that's been on my Facebook feed for the last 3 months for some reason. My body's telling me to go and do this. Yeah. My life is directed by my higher self, not external forces. It's an inside job. No one knows what you need spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically than you. No one knows that better than you. How else do we break spells? Well, collective despelling, media fasting, engaging with positive community circles, meditation groups, sound healing, positive things that help you feel at ease and at peace. Discernment training. This is really important, especially for kids. When we're adults, we kind of know what's what, hopefully. We've learned a few things over the years, but with our kids these days and the youth, younger generations, They need to, and especially with all the AI stuff coming out, it's really hard to tell what's true and what's not, with all the videos and things like that. Inner truth rituals, learning how to connect into your intuition so you get a feeling, it doesn't feel right to me. Or you know what? That feels like it's the truth for me. I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to listen to that. Conscious consumption of information. There is so much information around us now. It's only going to get even more with AI and things like that. So it's going to be really important to consciously consume that information. Are there good ones? Are there good spells? Absolutely. Everything you talk about, just do the exact opposite. So positive, surround yourself with positive thoughts, words, intentions, intentionally creating a positive energy field of influence with your words, both spoken and written, in the moment, right now. Now, you can also affect your future positively by having intentional thoughts, words, feelings, deeds, and actions that are going to create a positive outcome for yourself and others in your environment for the future. So what does that involve? Well, imagine at night before you went to bed, you just for a few moments, you imagined, you stepped into the future where your dreams have come true, your prayers have been answered, and you saw it, you visualized it, imagined it. Remember, Einstein said imagination is everything. Imagination breaks down to your inner magician or your image making machine. Very, very revered. It's how you communicate with the quantum world. Anciently, it was so revered. And so you can imagine what you would see. How does it feel? What do you hear someone saying to you? What do you say back? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? That is creating a positive spell for your future. So to give you another couple of examples, we had an ex-girlfriend and his money. So he got together with this with this lady, and he made her sign this prenup agreement. He was a wealthy man. If I told you his name, you'd know who he was. And then they broke up. And then he was a very, very successful investor. And they broke up, and everything he touched, it's like beforehand, everything he touched turned to gold. And then he could not make a positive. He was losing money so quickly and badly. And so he came and had a session, and she had put a psychic projection on him because when they broke up, she really got nothing. And they'd been together for several years. And, it was very unfair. I mean, anyway, I won't go into that. But let's just say the psychic projection affected his. So we cleared the psychic projection, and I gave him some advice about, you were together for a period of time, and this person really, stopped pursuing her thing to have more time with you, when really she could have been pursuing her career. So, what would be a really nice and generous thing to do to go back to that person? And so he did that, and everything turned around. He went and he made over when he got back, and he gifted her some money to get back on her feet and do different things. And he then went and made in the next year about 150 times more than what he gave her. So I wish he'd given me a percentage of his gains, but unfortunately, it cost him about $200 for a session. But this just shows you the power of energy. And when doing the right thing serves you, because he really did the wrong thing by her. That's why I underlined his money. Like his perception of that was just, was pretty cold, really. So there was another situation. We had an ex-husband who paid. He was from Haiti, and he paid for a shaman over there to cast a spell on my client, and she ended up breaking a leg and in hospital, and a few other things. And so we had to clear those things. Now, this was a bit tricky. This took me about 3 sessions to get to the bottom of this, and it was very advanced work. Because when you have a spell put on you by someone like myself or this other person who really knows what they're doing, I would never do that because I understand universal law, and it's only going to come back onto me for me to experience my creation. But if you go to someone who maybe isn't conducting the healing work with certain values, or they're not really healing, they're actually causing damage, they can really cause a lot of problems for people. And so sometimes you need to get help from someone who knows what they're doing to remove these things. And so her life completely changed around after that. She had this incredible run of bad luck when she left this person. And so now he's yeah, that's all worked out anyway. I won't go into too much more of that. So the question I have for you is what spells might be impacting you? I really hope that you know that you'll be sent the replay of this. I'm really hoping you've got some information out of this to food for thought. You can actually start going through your life and really looking at, oh yeah, what is going on here? What am I being impacted by? And how can I choose to step out of this and create some more freedom and sovereignty of my sovereign mind, my sovereign body, and my sovereign spirit? Now, we as a company, Deb and I, Nicole, if you go to our website, rezinatespiritual.com, if you want to learn more about this sort of stuff, you can become a healing practitioner to help yourself and others. And of course, if you need help, you can reach out and get a healing session. So, time for some questions. So let me just stop sharing and let's have a chat and see if anyone's got any questions about spells. Yes, Iris.
Yeah, James, as you were going through all of that, firstly, I found that incredibly interesting.
Oh, good.
It just kind of answers were flowing as you were talking about certain things and certain people and everything. And the question I wrote down was when you do a protection spell around someone, do you have to ask for their permission or just say, look, I'd like to do this, whether you agree or not, because I feel you need it,
Yes, it's always
rather
good.
than,
It's always
give you a clip over the head.
Yeah, it's always good to ask permission. If they're your kids and things like that, then you're they're in your care. It's a bit different. You know, but if it's like just a friend of yours, then there's nothing wrong with like it's different doing some healing on someone compared to wishing them good luck. So I remember saying to my mum, who's one of nine kids, and they've all had kids who have had kids who have kids. So really massive family, lots of cousins. And so my mum's mum died when she was 14, so she kind of raised a lot of my aunts and uncles. And so she's almost like the mother. And so on a Saturday morning, they call it the O'Neill grapevine. Everyone's ringing everyone, and everyone rings mum. She's on the phone all day. And within a family, you've got to remember there's always someone who's sick, doing exams, got a problem. And so my mum is just the biggest worry wart. And so I've worked really hard to help her understand, saying, Mum, when you stress and you worry, someone is over here and they're already going through a tough situation. Here you are, and you're thinking all these negative thoughts and worry about them. And that's going towards them. It's already affecting their vulnerable field. Whereas if you feel those things, write down a piece of paper, burn the piece of paper, and then you visualize them the way you know they want to be. Visualize them coming out of their exams going, yes, I passed my exams, or visualize them healthy and well and feel it, see it and feel it. And then that's sending them a very different vibration that's going to help them. So this is where, how you hear people say, oh, we'll pray for you. We'll do a group prayer
Yeah,
when someone's sick in the community and stuff like that. It's a similar thing. So you're not necessarily doing healing work. You're not going into their energy and pulling things out and, like we do when we do it, as you know, Iris, when we do energy
yeah,
medicine work and stuff like that, that you definitely need permission for that. But this is a bit different because you're just kind of wishing them well,
yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing was when you were talking about the films and the effects that it's having on people,
Yeah.
like you sit there, you go on Netflix, you find crime films, you find thrillers, you find all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I like to, even if it's not Christmas, I'd rather watch a Christmas show or a romance or a comedy,
Yeah.
because whereas my husband's, oh, I want action, I want action. So I just disappear when he wants action. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'll give him some action.
Yeah.
but, but yeah, and I thought about it and I thought, the influence that these movies and these things and the media are having out on people's minds
Mm.
is just so impactful in such negative ways. Surely I remember watching movies when I was younger. You weren't even born then, but about the dancing one. What was a couple that used to dance, or Laurel and Hardy, or they were movies that were good movies,
Yeah.
you could have a laugh, you could think, but they didn't stick in your mind. They were movies that you could talk about and say, oh, yeah, I watched that, and blah 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 blah. And yeah,
Well, this is something really interesting you bring up because you said something, you said it doesn't stick in your mind. And the reason why it doesn't is when we're feeling positive things, we're in a natural flow state. We don't collect and harbor. But when we're in a trauma state, we internalize and we hold on to it.
yeah,
So when you see kids, right, they're just when they're playing, they're not like locking it in. They're not like they're just in flow. And they go to the next thing and they're playing and they're dreaming. But then all of a sudden something bad happens and you can see they get obsessed by it and they cry for hours and they complain about it all day. It's very different. So we internalize the negative and we hold on to it.
yeah,
We don't let it go. And we don't have the cleansing rituals we used to have. There's a reason why Indigenous people would sing and dance and stomp around and play music at the end of the day because they would get anything they'd been holding on to, they'd release and let
yes,
go of. Because if you hold on to it, law of attraction starts to attract similar things. And
yeah.
so that's why we seem to hang on to the negative, but when we're having positive experiences, we're just in the flow state.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
James, I'm Italian, and coming from an Italian background, I remember when I was little, like mum and my dad and, the friends and everything, we'd all finish up having a big meal together and then they would break out into song. And it
yeah.
was something that these songs, Volare and all of those, that I still
Yeah.
reminisce over in my heart. And I miss those times. And I think it's so sad that this isn't anymore.
Why
You
don't you
know,
bring it back? Why don't you start doing it at dinner?
I do with my kids. So my
Lovely.
kids are pretty good because I bring in that Italian thing about it and I tell them stories and when I was cheeky and what I did and
You
all
just
the
say
rest of it.
molto bene, molto bene.
Oh, molto bello. Belli tempi, beautiful times,
Yeah.
But yeah, but I just wish that it was more like that now, whereas people get
Well,
together, they drink, they
yeah.
smoke and do, and that's not fun. It's a temporary fun that just doesn't last.
That's right. It reminds me of, so I had this quote off, especially during COVID, I had this quote of Socrates on my wall, and it inspired especially the spiritual alchemy modality. And it says, the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new.
Yeah,
And so this is where we can flip it around and change it from negative because you can, like as you said in your home, you can have the song around the meals. You can choose to watch positive, things that make you laugh. So we do have that choice and we can step out of that and create a new dimension for us and our family and our kids and
yeah,
and then people see you, like people see you having a meal and you hold hands and you thank the food and you send positive
yeah,
energy to it. And
yep,
people that haven't seen that before, they're like going, "Oh, this is a bit weird," but then they kind of do it and they go, "Oh, that actually felt really nice." And then them seeing you do that, it's just then they might think to start doing it in their home.
yeah,
And so, we do have a choice, and it is a shame. I understand what you're saying. It is a shame that these things have gotten to the point they have. But oftentimes, as human beings, we need to have the fire under we need to get kicked in the backside
yeah,
before we actually take action and do something. So,
yeah,
I think that's what's happening now. Everyone's feeling it, right? You can feel you're kind of going, whoa, things are pretty crazy out there. We
yeah.
need to start, you know, focus on our energy and building something new. And I reckon we can turn things around quite quickly if we all kind of get on board
Oh,
with it.
absolutely. Just a
Yeah.
quick funny one. When my kids were teenagers, and my best friend and I, we used to get together and sing, and I would play just the chords, and her and I would sing, and the kids would come in and sing their bit, and then we'd be a little bit out of tune, and they'd be going, "Oh shit, Mum,
Yeah.
I think we've got to go now."
Yeah, you got to get in tune. You got to in tune.
Yeah.
Thanks,
They
Sarah.
were great times, all
Yeah,
these
they were.
things, and I
Bring him
miss
back.
them.
Bring him back.
Yeah,
Bring
yeah.
back
I'm
the good
trying to
times.
get a karaoke thing going soon.
Nice.
I love singing. Love it.
Good. Bring it
Yeah.
back. And Peter, you had a question there. I can see a raised hand there.
Yeah, thanks, James. You mentioned about writing stuff down, like on
Yes.
online and things. But you talk a lot about the vibration of the sound of our voice.
Yep.
Is the typing, is the vibration from the thought? Where's that vibration coming from, the cast, the spell, if we're typing it down rather than speaking it out?
So initially it's the thought, but writing things down, handwriting things down is so much more powerful. So what I would do if you're going to write anything negative down, type it.
Now.
It's not the same, but if positive things, it's a sign of your nature. Everyone's got their own signature, and everyone's got
Yeah.
their own handwriting style. So when you handwrite your declarations and stuff like that, it's super powerful, the positive. Because you see it now in language, in the spelling. And so writing things down, that's why, traditionally things were written down and put in, that's why they put things on tablets and they documented things because of the power of the spoken word, but also the written word. But the initial vibration is in the thought.
Okay.
Because what happens is once you write it down, it doesn't, instead of becoming a fleeting thought, it's now captured. And so then you can then use that written word. So you can create sigils and you can create a lot of power in. I might do another talk on that in the future on how to create positive sigils. Don't want to create negative ones, but you can create positive sigils that contain a lot of power that build and grow over time and help you in whatever you're seeking to do. You can use a crystal or a sacred geometric shape, and you can imbue that with a lot of power and energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then back to the typing, where does the power come in that if you're typing it online or
Well,
into,
it's
yeah.
still a communication. It's still part of the written word. It doesn't quite
Mm,
have your signature on it, but
mm,
it still has a vibration. So,
yeah.
you want to be so if I was like, for example, what I noticed after a while is when I was doing healing sessions, I was writing down all the notes of all the negative things that were happening for people in their past lives because I had to
Mm,
write down notes. And so after, like sometimes I'd feel a bit heavy. I'm like, oh, what's that? And I meditated on it. I was like, oh, I'm writing down. I'm not writing the positive things they recreate. I'm just writing down the negative. So I started writing down the negative and the positive, so they cancel each other out when I was taking notes.
okay. Yeah.
When I was like doing, past life regression work and stuff like that. And so that's why it's important if you are like, you might have to write down a lot of negative stuff for your work, if
Mm,
you're documenting things. So you can say, Spirit, don't take that on. That's just for someone else. It's not mine. And then do a little smudge at the end of the day. And you can imagine like what I would do is I would imagine like a computer screen and I'd see yourself holding down the delete button and erasing all the negative stuff from your field,
okay.
from your mind.
Yeah. I do talk about a lot of negative stuff at work, so
Yeah.
online, yeah.
I do a clearing out of your third eye at the end of the day
Yeah.
and imagine all that and just imagine it like a screen. So all the stuff I've been talking about today that's been negative, all the things I've been saying, because you probably do, right? You probably have to talk
Mm,
about someone's health issues or whatever
yeah.
it is going on. Just delete it all because I'm the same, right? I find myself, you just doing healing work with people. People don't get online and go, everything's going fantastic, and I just want your help to make it even better. People go,
Yeah.
oh, this is happening and that's happening, and my husband's cheating on me, and got a sore head and stubbed my toe this morning. And so yeah, you need to. That's why we sage. That's why we do a clearing, cut cords every day.
And you would suggest that in our energy medicine practice as well, because we write down obviously what people's problems are. Well, I do anyway. And then, so you would say write the equal opposite in the positive
Yeah.
view and do a clearing after.
Yep. Do a clearing afterwards. Yep.
Okay.
I often do like a bit of a cleanse on myself as I'm coming out of the medicine room. The difference with the medicine room, one of the things is it's because it's your creation space. When you go
Yeah.
in there, you're getting healed while you're in there. So
Yeah.
you don't take it on like you do if you're just listening to someone outside of your medicine room.
Yeah.
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 So it's a bit
Okay,
different
cool.
in a way. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Anyone else got any questions about what we covered? Yes,
I
Adele.
have, I have a little question.
Sure.
Um, you probably know that I do some counseling as well as my other work.
Yeah.
But it's often done in my healing space that I have too. So I have home where I do my Zooms, and I have a room that I go to.
Yeah.
And sometimes people come in for one thing and it ends up being another. So I end up just doing a lot of talking. But because I just wanted to check, I always set my room up how you helped us, north, south, east, west, golden sphere, all that sort of thing. And I do the same at home.
Yeah.
Um, what I've been finding where it's just a conversation as in counseling is that energy healing is happening as we're speaking. I can actually watch words get like moved and that sort of thing. But what I wanted to check was making sure that I'm helping the person at the end when it's just being conversation, not just conversation, because the words, as I explained to them, words have their own energy, and the field here is helping clear that as we speak.
Yeah.
Then they walk out. I'm hoping that I'm not missing a step, because I've set the intention in the room that as people leave the room, that golden shower, either do it verbally and say golden shower of light to cleanse them, or I ask them to walk through the door. But should I be adding something extra in by words intentionally every time when
For,
the session ends?
for you to clear your space or for them?
For both?
For both? No, I think what you're doing is great. I often times when I'm having like when I teach spiritual alchemy here, what I have is I imagine set the intention there's like a void space underneath so that as everyone's releasing stuff, it just gets taken into the void and dissolved.
Yeah.
So you could do something like that. You could have like a void space and you can imagine, as they're saying all these words, instead of it going out and just sitting in your room, you can imagine them just like getting like a vacuum cleaner sucked into the void and
Ah,
alchemized.
yep.
And then you could have a source sphere that just sort of in your whole room that sets up. So you've got like a yin and yang, you got your source sphere and you got your void, and they're just being sucked into the void, and the source sphere is just healing, because they've given permission for you to come into your space, and your space happens to be set up with a void to alchemize, the negative, and the source sphere
Yep.
to give the energy that's needed for them to heal.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have one more question.
Sure.
If you have someone in your life, aka maybe a mother, who seems to like you being unwell and needing her empathy and sympathy,
Yes.
um, the thoughts, I have no control over her thoughts that
Mm.
she goes off and has. But when you were talking today, I was like clicking on something that happened last week, and I haven't been feeling very well this week, and it just clicked on me that I think my mother is this is going to sound horrible, but I think my mother's my greatest source of the fluctuations in my health because of how she thinks so heavily about needing me to need her in that way.
Yeah.
I've done cord cutting, I've done the vampire thing, I've done like the vampire energy thing, I've done all that. Is there anything else I can do to help, or that any of us can do when we have clicked on the fact that someone's having these thoughts around you without you knowing, but you start, like what you said, you start feeling in your solar plexus, or you just, bleh, whatever it is?
Yeah, so when in that kind of a situation when you've already done a lot of stuff yourself, that's the kind of time where I would probably reach out and get a session on that
Okay, booking
because
in now.
because especially with mothers, like I remember I was cutting a cord to a mother, and this lady would come back 3 minutes later and it'd be back again. And I was like, what's going on here? And then I realized the umbilical cord between a mother and a child is so important. It means life, right? And so you've got to be very, when it comes to dealing with the mother, you've got to have the life force positive chord still there, but remove all the other negative chords around it. And so
Okay,
and so if you only cut chords, then the instinctual thing, the mother feels it straight away and will reach out almost instantly to reconnect.
oh,
So,
okay,
so if you leave and you have a cleansing coming down through that initial life-giving cord, you just flush it with love and beauty and everything positive, and it's like trimming a hedge. You cut away all the negative stuff, so the positive, that initial cord can remain, and you set the intention of what it is. Nothing negative comes
okay.
down there. And so what I would do is I would go back to the moment that that got created. So it could be, but there's a moment where that dynamic got created between you and your mum, and there's a
Mhm.
moment where your mum probably had it created for her, maybe with her mum or somewhere on the line. She got this idea of someone needing me equals my self-worth and love.
Yeah.
So you need to change that for her and for you. And
Okay.
you have permission to do that for her because it's affecting you and she's your mum.
Okay.
Anyone else you
Awesome.
can't. Yeah. So I would do that in probably in a regression session with you.
Okay.
But you could also have a go at doing it yourself in your medicine room and
Yeah.
see if you can do that.
Thank you. That makes so much sense because I could feel as you were speaking, I could feel that connection to the words being
Yeah.
thought, not so much spoken, but her, because she does loopy thoughts. She's passed that on to me, and I'm working so hard to retrain my mind. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very clear.
And it's a dimension that gets created, right? Because I had the same thing with my mum, not in a like intentional way, but I probably should have died like 50 times from life-threatening asthma between 7 and 30, right?
Mm,
And so the dimension that got created between me and my mum was, me being sick and getting all this love and attention from my mum, and now I can feel it. Like, how are you, darling? You okay? Even like I haven't been ill for a long time, but it's still like this
yeah.
because it's just that had a long time, a big build up. And so it's something I had to go back and recreate. So I can just get together with my mum and there isn't an expectation of, are you okay? You're gonna like, are you breathing? You're like wake up in the middle of the night, blue fingernails and blue around the face because I was nearly had no
Yeah.
air. So it was, and so many of us have that. For people that have had ill health as a child, things like that can really get locked in. And
Mm,
our mothers can build a sense of doing their job and loving their child is that dynamic. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not ill intent, it's just what happened. Law of attraction, right? Just builds and
mm.
grows and becomes its own little energetic dynamic that wants to be fulfilled. So you need to clear that out and create a different dynamic that's positive and interactive and how you going, what's happening in your life, and a different way of connecting as a parent and child. Okay, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed it, and for those of you watching the replay, hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget if you need any support, reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you guys later on.